Hi. Oh, that was prepubescent.
Well, hello. hello.
Oh, and Duck's saying hello too, apparently.
All of us. Okay. Well, I guess that's introductions out of the way. Hello, I'm Simon. This is Josh. The barking that you can hear in the background is a small sausage dog named Ducky. Two of us, two of the three mentioned, are in a band called Frats. The other is a dog. He's in a band called Annoying Little Bastard.
Yeah.
And we are streaming our adventures in the music industry. We have been a band for week 7 now. This is
Wow.
something like that, maybe slightly longer.
Probably longer.
And we are finding our way through the music industry and figuring out how to be a successful band.
Mm-hmm.
In the absence of knowing better. So
There's definitely a lot of that absence.
Oh yes. So follow us on our journey to stumbling over our own feet, falling flat on our faces, and maybe making some music along the way. On that front, we now have some completed mixes or nearly complete mixes.
Yeah, nearly complete mixes. So, like this week, as part of kind of the recap, one of the things that has been on my books this week has been mixing Not So Nostalgic, or whatever we're calling it, and struggling with that a little bit, purely because my kind of experience with mixing has been quite heavily technical in my career and not as creative, and that's been an interesting experience. Lots of phone calls to Simon this week around that.
Had to teach him how to be creative.
Well, it's
which
weird.
I don't believe in.
No, well,
as
I
you
know
know.
you don't. I know you don't believe it.
Creativity, total myth. That's a future episode.
I think it's less about the I use creativity very loosely in what I'm saying there, but I think what I've been struggling more with is just the intention around the decisions that I've been making while mixing. Like why am I going about the mix this way instead of you always do this to a snare drum, you always do this to a kick drum, which is kind of what you do when you're doing the work that I do outside of Frights, which is live broadcasts, music, and mixing of live shows. There's kind of there's a formulaic kind of approach to it because you've usually only have a short period of time to do the mix. When it's a broadcast, you only have the time that you're on air really to kind of produce something that's listenable, and so you kind of rely heavily on a template, I guess is how you put it.
Yeah.
And it's a very different kind of type of mixing to say studio mixing where you actually are kind of engaging with some maybe more experimental ideas. You kind of, depending on the project, you might have a bit more time, the luxury of time, which is obviously problematic for a lot of artists, including me. And so that's been kind of my week of mixing with Not So Nostalgic, and we're also trying to not define a sound, but maintain a certain kind of feeling in the songs and a certain kind of sound in the songs. We've talked about the Never Ending Sleepover and what that means, and then we with what we did around the release marketing kind of idea of what we're doing with Not So Nostalgic, the ideas that came around that. So I took those ideas and kind of roughed out how I'd like it, but there was just a few kind of points, particularly with say the drums, where I was just hitting a wall in the vibe department, in the intention behind what I was doing.
Well, there's your problem. Drums shouldn't be hitting a wall. They should be hitting drums.
Well, they do hit a wall. It's called a limiter.
Oh.
Yeah. Or a clipper, depending on who you are. But yeah, so that's been kind of interesting. I think I've learned a lot this week in that respect, because part of being in a band is that we're all kind of doing our core like, you know, we're all kind of taking on different jobs. It's like a business or anything, any kind of endeavor where there's multiple people involved. You've got your stuff, which is kind of more framed around maybe the marketing and how we push it to the world, and these ideas of meta narrative and lyrics, you know, and storytelling, you know, which is, I think we're all kind of on the storytelling trip a bit, but particularly when it comes to making sure story is consistent or narrative is consistent in the music that we're making, that's something that you kind of are really interested in. You know, for me, it's the production and the technical kind of excellence, I guess, proficiency, like the same with this kind of streaming stuff. And my brain's just like still waking up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the same goes for how we're producing the music and how we're presenting that to the world, and those are important things to me. And then I guess logistics and organization as well is really important for me as well, because I kind of focus a lot on putting all the people in the same place, and that's obviously, you're working with artists, time consuming, because notoriously artists are flaky.
Right.
Yeah. And then like Matt's kind of focus is much more of a kind of back of house thing, where he is specifically kind of looking at, you know, the hard side of making stuff and solidifying a vibe and making sure, like, he's interested in narrative as well, but he also likes to experiment and play with new sounds and strike into new areas and things like that. So we all kind of have our, you know, and Matt, for instance, doesn't necessarily want to get too involved in the stuff that we're doing, like the streaming stuff. Like he only has a certain amount of time at the moment that he can commit to the band, because we're all kind of working effectively full-time jobs outside of this. So getting together all in one place is kind of easier for me and you, and less easy for him, you know. And particularly at the moment where he's working on a large production as part of one of his main jobs. So that kind of breakdown, you know, allows us to kind of play around in these different areas. And so between me and Matt, I'm always trying to kind of like work with him rather than kind of just go off on my own. So part of this mixing process for me has been just going, okay, because in the past me and Matt have had quite different mixing styles because of the different areas that we focus on. And so I've been kind of learning a different way of mixing effectively for this project. So all to do with that core proficiency thing that we've been talking about in previous weeks. But it's just in the actual area that I would usually find easy, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different style of doing something that you've historically had lots of form in.
Yeah.
And yeah, in some ways there's an element of you've got to know the rules to break the rules, which is where you are, but there's also an element of you've got these very well-worn tracks that your mind wants to go down, and getting it to not go down those tracks
is hard.
Yeah.
And that was what we were talking about yesterday. I went about the mix of this, I tried to go about it differently from the start, which I did, and I found that was quite useful. But then there was inevitably a point where I found myself back in the old groove of things, and that was where I got stitched up, you know.
Yeah.
And starting from the fundamentals, and then so I went back the other way and came at it from a macro and came into it, and that seemed to solve the problem a lot quicker for me, you know. And that's where the intention thing was really problematic for me, like, or where that was the biggest problem for me, I think, because I would find myself in the groove and then stop thinking, and that was the, you know, the lack of intention kind of like jumping in front of me.
On the positive side, it sounds like you found some ways that don't work.
Well, yeah, I did find some ways that don't work, and I mean, like, there was nothing. I think objectively there was nothing wrong with what I was doing. It just wasn't what I was trying to do, if that makes sense. The goal was set around these ideas of nostalgia and the past and bittersweet and things like that, and trying to maintain and enhance those in the track. were kind of my primary goals, and they're quite nebulous just by themselves. And I'd already kind of broken them down a bit more. But you know, it's about it's about practice and workflow change for me, because you what I'm trying to move away from is these, like you said previously, ingrained ideas or previously ingrained workflows that just don't work for this kind of application. For this application, yeah. So that's been fun. Yeah, that's been a fun week.
Fun's one word for it. It didn't sound like you were having fun when you called me up. It sounded like you were pulling your hair out.
Well, I was pulling my hair out, absolutely.
Thus the beanie.
Yeah, and so that was the mixing, but that's coming along. And like this afternoon after this stream, we're also continuing some recording on the other track that we're working on kind of concurrently, which we shouldn't be doing based on our little kind of 8-week thing, but it kind of came up, and one of the
best laid plans of mice and men rarely come to pass.
What is it? Once you get punched in the nose, planning doesn't matter, or something like that. Some boxer said something.
Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face, I think is the...
Yeah, who said that?
I don't know. But it's another spin on no plan survives the first meeting with the enemy or something like that, which is of like a previous wartime.
Sun Tzu.
Yeah, exactly. Something in that.
Sun Tzu, yeah. One of those.
Well,
yeah,
off track now.
But I think we had that discussion around, okay, do we just put this in the back for a second and come back to it? And I think we both decided that would be stupid. So we decided that we'd like to finish the production as quickly as possible, because the musical component is basically there. It's just capturing the lyrical and vocal component that we've already done a session on, but we need to
push it further.
We needed to push it further because the lyrics that we had were kind of a bit nebulous, and they didn't really speak to anything in particular. In fact, they were a little bit confusing. And this is a collaborative track, just like the previous one is.
And most of our tracks will be in that collaborative space.
So figuring out how to kind of talk to Ghost Coast about how we were going to approach these lyrics was kind of important. What it came down to is they didn't really care too much, and I just rewrote them, and they're not completely different, but they're just more in line with some kind of something that makes sense if you were to listen to it, which is a nice experience, and it kind of pulled me out of that funk that I was in last week, which was around lack of proficiency in the lyric writing kind of component. Yeah, cool. So that was cool.
And where are we at on distribution?
So continuing the research around what distribution platforms use and how they actually work was kind of another thing that was on my cards this week. And the kind of ideas that came to the surface around this were what was important to us at this particular point. I didn't want to spend any more time on it, is what I got to, but that was one of the big kind of goals for making a choice, right?
Sure.
What it comes down to is that you can release on multiple platforms different songs under the same name. So depending on what you're releasing can change the choice of platform. Like if we were to release covers, that would be a very different choice than releasing originals.
And you would typically do that. You would have those multiple streams of I'm releasing this type of music on this platform.
Yeah.
And the other type of music on a different
platform.
Well,
really the for us, because we're not really engaging, the only kind of content we're engaging with where we have to worry about rights is covers that we didn't write. So, because we are doing covers of our own music.
Or alternate versions.
Or whatever. We don't have to worry about that. They're effectively our releases, and that's fine. But covers of other people's songs, there's rights management stuff around those that you've got to consider. And all the big platforms like DistroKid, TuneCore, CD Baby, in the form of Sounddrop, I think is the company that does the covers, if I'm remembering that correctly. They all have a mechanism for doing covers releases. But Sounddrop is I'm pretty sure Sounddrop is the one that's dedicated to covers, where it's like $1.50 per cover. or something per release. So, and they sort out all the rights management stuff. Whereas the other ones you have to pay $10 a year or whatever to kind of maintain those rights. And I'm kind of about the idea of perpetual releases. I don't want to fuck around with having to deal with like ongoing costs and subscription fees and all that crap. So my intention is to try and find a platform that kind of allows us to do perpetual releases. The other thing that I came to was the big three, which are CD Baby, TuneCore, and DistroKid. They're the big three as far as I'm concerned. They all started out as companies that were run by people who understood music, and now they're all public companies owned by, multinationals or whatever. They've been sold. And that doesn't make them bad, but in my experience of companies like that, they start to kind of innovate in ways that aren't necessarily useful to the artists that they serve. So DistroKid, for instance, even though it's got this really great subscription model, has a lot of hidden fees around like perpetual uploads and covers and all that kind of stuff. It's also really simple. It's got a really simple UX or UI, I should say. And that means that you don't really get that much information. The reports aren't that great, and we're kind of really interested in tracking metrics. So that kind of put them out for us because we're interested in metrics. CD Baby again was another one that was kind of on the list, and like I've used CD Baby in the past, and like they're not bad or anything like that, but they are an older platform. And they have some like tie over legacy stuff. For what it's worth, they all seem to distribute to the same platforms and the same group of digital providers. Your Spotify's and Apple's and whatever, and your different marketplaces. But some give you more choice than others, and there's a lot of digging that you've got to do in these three kind of main platforms to kind of uncover that. The best of the three that I kind of came to was TuneCore, and that was because they've recently restructured and they've changed the way that they do things, where there's more stats. They distribute to more of the Asian markets, and they have this subscription platform that's similar to DistroKid, that allows you to hold on to more of your royalty and stuff like that. I can't remember what TuneCore is, but CD Baby takes nothing. Oh, no, CD Baby takes 9%. They don't do it, sorry, 9-10%.
Bit of a difference between nothing and
sorry,
10%.
I'm pulling all this out of my head, so to show that I've got it in there. But also because I don't want to read off my notes because it's boring.
I could say some things there, but I'm going to keep that.
Well, I mean,
the thing is that it's like, as a lot of what we're going to be discussing over the course of doing this, there's this layer of important but very dry
information
stuff that exists in the realities of putting music together and getting it out into the world and just DIYing it.
Yeah, exactly. And just like every part of the music industry, it's friggin' riddled with crazy shit.
Yeah.
And everything is slightly different because they all came from slightly different places. But because income's important to us, getting something that doesn't take a commission is kind of important for me. And I mean, DistroKid has that, and TuneCore, I can't remember if they take a commission or not, but there's a fourth one that I haven't talked about, which is a newer one. So one of the big reasons for not going with the main three is because they're owned by big multinationals, and I don't know what they're going to do in the near future.
Sure.
And it's not because I'm necessarily worried about that happening, but I would like to try, given that we're in this kind of experiment and try stuff phase, I'd like to try one of these newer ones that's excelled and is still owner operated. And that's Too Lost is the name of it. And it's kind of got a similar subscription model, but it's got a very clear fee structure when you get into it, and it also has really, really good metrics. They do take a commission on some distributions. So TikTok, for instance, they take a higher commission, which is like 20% or something off of TikTok. And to be honest, I'm not too worried about that because the other thing they have is these really great metrics tracking features. Yep. So you can see how, and very granular. So you can see how a track is faring in different marketplaces on different platforms, how many plays it gets, what videos it gets synced to, the special feature that you get, which is like $150 per track per month that you put this advanced analytics on, because you wouldn't need to put it on every track. Mm-hmm. It allows you to get all this granular information that you wouldn't get otherwise.
Can you toggle it on and off? Like if a track suddenly starts picking up?
Yeah. That's my understanding of it. I haven't tested it yet, but that's my understanding based on the research that I've done.
Fantastic.
So because metrics are really important to us, as is revenue, having a place that we can track that and make decisions around what we're doing with our social media, or our next release, or what artists we're engaging with, or if there's like influencers out there that we might want to do collaborations with, talking about cross-artist collaboration or cross-discipline collaboration. These things are important to be able to pull out of the information. And reports on some of these older platforms are archaic, as you'd expect.
Yeah.
Whereas this company is relatively new. It's run by a musician operator. Or someone who really understands the music industry. Excuse me. And so it kind of comes at it from an artist perspective, which is, I think, really important to what we're doing, along with a business perspective. So that's why you get these really great analytics. So I think that's what we're going to start with. And the great thing about Too Lost and all these other big ones is that if you ever did want to transfer them, the songs, you can easily transfer the distributions between the platforms without losing the stats, the streaming numbers, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's super important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that you need to, but you can.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a potential source of horror stories.
There's definitely, I've read some horror stories for sure.
Some people's Spotify pages or on streaming services are an ongoing horror story. You see a song that appears like 3 or 4 times across different releases, and they're just nothing about it is synced together and
I fully expect
chaotic.
That's going to happen with us to some degree.
But it sounds like we'll be able to sort it out.
Yeah, I feel like we will. Like I said, I don't really. We need to use the platforms at this point. I've done as much research as I can do without actually putting out a song and actually figuring it out. And that's where we're at.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I like that. Let's get a song out.
Yeah.
Soon. Finish that mix.
I'm working on it. Not today. Today's different.
How about tomorrow?
Tomorrow I'll spend an hour or two on it.
Yeah. And how many hours or two do you reckon are left?
Honestly, I don't think it's far. It's like I was saying to you the other day. Like I'd spent maybe 4 hours on it, and got it most of the way there. It's just these little fine detail things that were kind of getting to me, like the drums not quite clicking with the rest of the track. So look, probably another 4 hours.
What happens if Matt or I listen to it and hear something we're not convinced about in it?
Well, you guys will tell me what that is immediately, and I'll be able to fix it quickly. Because the problem is I'm fighting with myself right now.
So should we have a listen at this point, or is that not a thing?
Probably let me have one more hour. But I'm literally I almost sent it yesterday, but I just wanted to fix this one. There's there's one more little melody line, and then the little vocal things that I was talking about, wanting to fix around the tuning, that I wanted to get locked down, and then it's basically ready for a first listen.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm doing this in between things too. That's the other thing. I'm mixing in the field. Like I set up TeamViewer, and I was sitting at a football game over the weekend and had my MacBook Air connected to my production computer at home and was mixing while I was sitting at the football.
Cool.
Yeah. So like, which is not the ideal listening environment, but like honestly,
a lot of external noise.
I don't really care for the perfect listening environment anyway, because everyone who's going to be listening to it is going to be listening in a
True
shit.
That's why the car test is so important.
Yeah, I mean the argument around having a good listening environment is you're meant to be able to hear the stuff and get to the product quicker, but I don't know. Like me and Matt kind of subscribe to the AirPods mixing idea quite heavily these days, just purely because one, they're there, two, you can do it in a state that is a bit more comfortable. Like you can be sitting in bed and mixing on your AirPods, which is lovely. You know, in the case of me mixing at the football, like the same thing. It was AirPods in, noise cancellation on, earmuffs over the top. Oh, like, you know, like worker muffs.
Yeah.
You know, loud noise stoppers. And
PPE.
Then, PPE, that's the one. And then off I went remotely mixing, you know, which is great because, you know, the computer's tiny and it means you can do it anywhere. And that's kind of been a real learning experience for me as well. It's just like not doing it in a studio. But I like it. I like to be able to let it percolate and then pick it up for 20 minutes in the little gaps that I get, and then put it back down, because you do the thing that you've been thinking about, and then you get to think about it more, and it gives you a bit more perspective. So I have, and that's kind of what happened yesterday with me trashing what I'd done with the drums the first time and doing this other thing, because I kind of got a short break, walked away, came back, and then 30 minutes later I had a drum sound that I was happy with, you know, that fit, that was intentional, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. This stuff goes way over my head. I just hear white noise.
Well, it's the same stuff as what you would do with graphic art, like graphic design.
I'm sure it is, but
just slightly different shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Different senses. I wonder how perfumiers and things feel about this. Do they sit there?
Well, I told you about the consumption thing, right? We talked about consumption, how when I used to drink, if I'd have 2 glasses of wine, I couldn't taste anything.
Yeah, yeah.
That's kind of how I feel with music.
Yeah, you go edit blind very
quickly, yeah. And you just can't tell the difference between that sound and that sound. You know, it's something that comes over time and listening deeply. And I just, you know, haven't been doing as much of that as I used to.
You've become a musical sommelier.
Yeah.
There's notes in here.
There's notes. I can smell them. So I think that covers my kind of what I wanted to talk about. We were talking about Waiting Line, which is the track that we're working on this afternoon that has a nice lyric sheet that I'm really happy with. We talked about that a bit last week too, though we talked about Not So Stout. I've Got Mine, the other song that got written instead of I Got Mine we intended to write. But yeah, so Waiting Line is up today, and there's only a little bit more lyric writing that needs to be done there, and Tommy's verse at the end.
Yeah. So to wrap that up in a neat little bow.
Yes.
There's currently a lot of chaos around the actual music production stuff, but it is getting increasingly more orderly.
Yeah, it is. I think so. I mean,
we're kind of working
as
through
ordered
a bit
as
of
you can
a
be.
Backlog of goop at the moment.
Yeah, unclogging the pipes.
Yeah, because when we decided to do this, there was a lot of stuff that was kind of little sparks of half-finished things as a result of the activities that we'd been doing before.
Yeah, and the processes we've kind of written up and the ideas that we've talked about since doing those productions have meant we're kind of coming in the middle of the process and editing,
and which is making everything much more chaotic.
Yeah, much more chaotic. And we've got to be...
But it's a great learning process.
It is, and I think between the three of us, it's been a great process because, you know, me and you are particularly both interested in getting it done as quickly as possible. I'm also interested in making it good sounding, as is Matt, you know, so there's kind of these offsets around like how we maintain our personal fulfillment and have a technically proficient product.
Yeah.
But I'm also very cognizant of the time because I fucking hate sitting on things for weeks and months at a time.
Yeah. I have a lot of dissonance around this myself just simply because all my favourite music was recorded in lounge rooms, bathrooms, squash courts. Yeah, just the worst possible environment.
I honestly think we should be doing that in the future, to be honest.
Yeah, well.
You know, some like...
it's a hard thing to look at the advantages that you've got. Like as part of the advantages that we've got access to lots of great gear, lots of great spaces, studio vibes, and to look at that stuff and go, we're not going to use it is a difficult proposition. It's a hard thing to do, and especially when we're in that space of that idea of know the rules before you break the rules. I feel like we're not quite at the having all the rules locked down part. And maybe it is a case of just throwing that concept away and going, actually, we don't need to know the rules at all, because you can point to great examples of lots of punk music and things like that come out of deliberately not knowing the rules for as long as possible.
Well, we do have some rules that I've been trying to kind of implement even after running a studio for 2 years. It's been not fully implemented how I wanted it to be, around having stuff ready to go when you walk into a room. And because we're kind of operating the space that we have access to in this kind of hybrid way where we're allowing other producers to come in and dry hire it, as well as using it for our own ends, they're kind of at odds, because as soon as you let someone else into your space, they do things a bit differently, and then suddenly it's not quite.
Yeah, you come in and all the patches are different.
It's all different. Yeah. It's all over the place, and so that particular idea has led to some really great outcomes when it comes to music production. Like with Waiting Line and Not So Nostalgic, both came out of sessions pretty quickly within a couple of hours, an almost completely produced track because of that workflow that we had. I mean, it's about proficiency too and working together and all that kind of stuff, but if we didn't have that be ready to record as you walk into the studio kind of philosophy,
it would have 2 hours would have been set up.
Yep. Which is problematic, for what we're trying to do. And if speed is one of our kind of main goals, then we have to have good workflows, efficient workflows. Yeah.
All right. So is that our recap for last week complete?
Yeah, unless you have anything you want to talk about.
I don't think so. Shall we take a tiny little break?
Yeah. We don't have anything we want to talk about. Well, we've talked a little bit about what we're going to go through going forward. So yeah, let's take a little break and we'll come back for our weekly discussion.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Cool. Oh well, we've been Frights, the band. Josh, Simon.
Hello.
The ethereal Matt. And
Ducky the sausage continuing to bark in the background.
Ducky the sausage, yep. And we're going to just take a short break where we're going to get a drink and chill out for a sec, and then we'll come back and we're going to be talking about
social media.
Oh, that stuff.
Yuck.
Cool. All right. Follow us on the socials, Frights_music. And
follow us on the yucks.
On the what?
Well, I just said how much I don't like social media.
On the yucks.
Revealed.
Well,
revealed to the world.
Follow us on there, and follow us soon to be on Spotify with some music.
Hey. Well, you can't follow us there yet.
No, you can't. You will be able to.
Yeah. Check back in 2 weeks.
Yes, check back in 2 weeks. All right. See you in a sec.
Hello. Welcome back. We are now back from our intermission. Josh has a fresh pot of tea, so you know we're in for some trouble. It's going to be caffeinated.
I'm freezing. Right? I need something warm inside me.
Little warm hug in the tum. Delightful. Anyway, part 2 of the stream is our recap. And sorry,
that was part 1 of the stream.
That was part 1 of the stream.
You're reading the wrong thing.
Yes. Oh, I see what's happened.
You've put it in the wrong spot.
I've put it in the wrong spot.
That's
there we
right.
go. So, I've made a total hash of this.
Proficiency, practice.
Well,
give it a go.
That's why we're doing it. That's why we're doing all of this, is for proficiency. So, welcome back from the intermission. This is Josh. I am Simon. We are part of a band called Frights. We make music and friends.
You sound like Lewis Rossman.
I don't know who that is.
He's the Apple right to repair guy.
Oh!
Angry guy off the internet.
The internet's favorite angry man.
Yeah.
Okay. I've only got a vague idea of who that is now. Anyway, we make music, friends, and mistakes all at the same time.
We sure do.
So feel free to follow along and watch us continue to make mistakes, become one of those friends, and hear the music.
But at the same time, watch us get better. As we make mistakes, you'll see that one day that we're better.
Hopefully the mistakes will go away at some point.
Never.
Probably not.
You know they
won't. Let's face it. They'll be different and bigger mistakes.
Yeah, the kind that you lose money on.
Well, that's. I mean, arguably we're losing money on this mistake, but already.
This is not a mistake though. This is the thing.
This is the thing itself. Maybe
because we left our stable jobs to chase our dreams.
Maybe the mistakes is the friends we made along the way. Huh.
Some of them.
Well, anyway. So we're going to talk today about the thing I've been dreading personally, social media.
Oh, yes.
Being that I came from a marketing background, social media is something I've got some experience in, some form in, and a general distaste for. I remember a time before social media.
Well, let's start there then. So why do you... First off, why do you hate social media?
Well, it's
what's the problem?
It comes down to. I don't know that I necessarily have an issue with the concept of social media or even the execution of social media. You know, we live in a capitalist format in the world, so it's hard to begrudge companies making money, and effectively advertising is nothing new.
No, it's been around for a long time.
So it's kind of. It's hard to go, well, they're a scourge on society because they're using attention to make money. So's everyone. So are we.
Yeah.
Not yet, but in an ideal way. So it's somewhat hard to be too upset and angry about that. Sure, it's unethical, but what isn't? And maybe that's a cynical approach. Lay it on top of another cynical approach, but what it comes down to personally is it's just not for me.
Yeah.
And so knowing that I at some level need to engage with it to achieve these goals that we've set out to do things like to be seen as an expert on how to have a career in the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
Social media is kind of an elephant in the room. It's something you need to engage with to achieve that goal. Most of the time,
yeah.
There are absolutely examples and ways to do this sort of stuff without engaging with social media, but it's a harder road, and it's hard. Like, it's a hard thing to point to and say you don't need that.
I fully think that there's a way to have a sustainable career without social media. I would say still, but it is a limited one. So, completely disregarding it as a method for maintenance and sustainability is kind of stupid.
Yeah, and even if it's something that you choose not to engage with personally, there's an understanding that your customer base, your listeners, your fans, your audience, whatever word you want to use, will be using social media. So making things that are amenable to their life and give them ways to use that to express themselves in those spaces is still important, even if you personally have no presence there. So having an understanding of social media and a command of it is still something you need to do, even if you choose not to personally engage. So,
And what about what are the things that are good about social media, do you think?
Well, reach. There is an argument to be made that it helps democratize ideas, though less so now than before.
I still think you find your way into those grooves sometimes when you're on there. I give myself a little bit of social media time every day to just veg and rot, I guess is the term. And that's lovely. It's a nice little dopamine hit at the end of the day, where I've got like a 15-minute or 30-minute timer on it so that I don't end up doom scrolling all day long. But quite often I'll find myself in a bit of a groove that is pleasurable and engaging as well, and I've gotten a lot of things out of social media that have driven me to more long form content, which is kind of part of what I'm sure you're going to talk about. That kind of allows you to kind of dig in deeper to an idea that you probably didn't know about before.
Yeah,
that's been delivered to you in a 15-second, 30-second chunk that's really engaging.
Yeah. Yeah, the whiplash that you get on social media when talking about this 15-minute blocks just reminded me of last night. I was watching the soccer, Socceroos versus Palestine, which was a very interesting match Perth? Conceptually.
Was that Perth?
I actually have no idea where it was played. I wasn't paying very close attention.
Fair enough.
But in the surrounding chatter around it, I got linked to I can't remember his name, but a guy who is involved in soccer in Australia, who was talking about these two games that were happening, the Palestine game, and before it there was a game with Bangladesh. And so he's talking about this incredibly heartbreaking situation in Bangladesh of this refugee camp with 1 million refugees living in it. And within that, half of them are under 18 and half of them have scabies.
Ugh.
So we're talking about 500,000 people with scabies. A refugee camp with 1 million people in it. And then the next thing it served me was a joke about semen. And I just I went from being heartbroken to guffawing
in inappropriate joke land
in about half a second.
Yeah.
And that kind of emotional whiplash is not something that really exists off in other spaces.
Except for trivia, when we go to trivia.
Well, I mean, that's a whole other kettle of fish. But it's that kind of jumping from idea to idea so rapidly is something that is kind of unique to social media. And it's related to all sorts of stuff like comedy. Like the way comedy works is to usurp your expectations, make you feel one way, and then pull the rug out from under you. And so it's kind of it's not that it doesn't exist other places. You can go and see a comedian and have that same effect, but it's always on, and it's being curated in ways that are somewhat uncontrolled. And so there's this kind of collision of concepts happening.
It's controlled, but it's not at the same time. It's controlled to maintain your presence on the apps, as an individual.
Yeah, but it's not curated. It's algorithmically sorted.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's not something that the nuance isn't there that someone curating an experience for you would have.
Yes,
that takes and even if it's
which is kind of something that we would do as artists on social media. We would curate our presence there.
Well,
and potentially curate it against what the algorithm is serving, maybe.
Well, I mean, maybe. The idea is to take the advantages that gives you to create more surface area for your art to exist in.
Yeah.
So what that looks like in practice is, we know that we have parts of our audience who are interested in whatever content we identify them being interested in, and we know they're being served that content. So how do we make our art slot in to that same space so that when they're scrolling through, I don't know, recipes, they're getting served lots of food content.
Mm-hmm.
What can we offer them that makes it sticky for them and make them go, oh, this really lovely, this lovely experience that I'm having, this lovely dopamine hit is now tied together with this piece of this other element, this musical element, that that they become attached, and then can grow from there. You now have a relationship with that.
Yep.
So that was a very squishy way of describing the goals, but that's effectively what it comes down to. Is like we can.
So do you want me to give you a chance to actually list them out? So
to structure this out.
What are the goals, Simon?
What are the goals? Well, so the reason that we're picking up social media now as a topic to talk about is because we've spent the last couple of entries in this little series talking about our goals, and also then the meta narrative that we want to talk about. So the big goals that we define, our top priority goals, are streams. Some level of financial success, being able to fund ourselves, to do interesting stuff, because otherwise why the hell are we even bothering? And to be seen as experts in how to create a sustainable career in the music industry. So those are our four goals. I'm holding up 5 fingers, but I want to hold up 4 fingers.
Yes.
Those are our 4 top priority goals. So now that we have those in mind, we can be mindful to be laddering toward them with everything that we do.
Yep.
And then the meta narrative is what gives us material to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So we have spoken at a macro level about the big broad strokes meta narratives that we want to put together. We want to talk about this idea of leaving stable jobs that we could do until we're, in our 60s and ready to retire, maybe 70s by the time the retirement age might be once we get there.
Yes.
Never die.
Never retire.
Never retire.
Work until you're in the grave.
And then work a little more.
Yep.
Imparting your calcium into the soil.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway. So we've got this story to tell about leaving stable jobs to chase a dream. That's quite compelling.
Mm-hmm.
Not exactly a unique story.
No. I mean, it's kind of par for the cause when you're making something that is yours.
Yeah, but it's very different to someone who's maybe coming up through their 20s and they've left high school or university and they're
straight into it.
Yeah.
Which I would argue is a lot of the main kind of idea around, like the main meta narrative around artists in the broader music industry. You have all these kind of superstars who are young people who just did their degree or came straight out of high school, were discovered, whatever that means, and then suddenly like pop megastars doing big tours, assigned to a major label, blah 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 blah. It's it's a tale as old as time. It's a tale as old as the music industry, one would argue, even older than the music industry. We're going all the way back to kind of classical composers who were taught to play piano when they were 6 or whatever.
Yeah.
So I agree. Different story.
Yeah. So it's there's an angle there. There's stories to tell around fear of failure.
Mm-hmm.
There's stories to tell about the kind of Peter Pan energy that we're cultivating of, we grew up and decided we didn't like it, so now we're going back the other way. It's never too late to have a happy childhood, as they say.
Back to Neverland.
That's right. So this kind of, we're building up this overall picture of dream chasing, and while we're on movie references, there's also this kind of Wizard of Oz angle of we're giving people a peek behind the curtain. We have enough music industry connections and whatever else through the existing careers that we've had that we can afford to not be fully set on this idea of we need to paint this picture that is not necessarily related to reality in a one-to-one way, that we can paint this more realistic, nuanced picture of what it is to be someone who's making art and putting it out into the world and trying to live off it, and the more industrial parts of that, the rocking up and actually putting the work in, not glamorizing it,
making the muse work for you, not the other way around.
That's right.
Turning up, or whole the reason why I'm listening to the War of Art again is just to kind of remind myself of why I'm here, and that the conquering of resistance, which is the big one in that book.
But with that comes a celebration of to show people that there is work in it, and that it's a labor. There's also a story to tell there about celebrating what it is to be a nerd about something, of championing nerdiness. I think
which we are in now.
Unabashedly.
Yeah.
And they're again talking about what the kind of antithetical side of that is, which is maybe the more typical story, is you have this impossibly cool young person who comes out of a cloud of smoke, and it's that they are phenomenally successful and rich and beautiful and kind, whatever, and it's effortless, and these are things to aspire to. Where we are taking a different view to that. We are going a DIY route.
We're not rolling in cash. We're definitely worried about that every day.
So there's another component to the story to tell there. Not only is it's not the story of I did work a job and then I happened to have all this resource and money and connections and whatever else through working that job, and now I can transition into the thing I really want to be doing.
Which is the story of Gimlet Media.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
We're doing something that's quite different, and from that, and that makes it even, I guess, like a longer shot. So we have the basis of a meta narrative to tell. The other component that we could have done and maybe should have done before diving into an actual social media strategy, or starting to form up a social media strategy, would be to define our audience, which we haven't done. But I'm okay with not having done that yet. We can do that later, because defining and redefining your audience should happen.
All the time.
Yeah,
and I also I'm not entirely sure we know who our audience, even where we would start. I know what I'd like my audience to be.
Well, that's where you start.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say this: like my ideal audience is it's kind of two audiences. There's music that we make that is very accessible, and then there's music that we make that is nerdy, and kind of a bit kind of indulgent in a way for us.
Would you say that it's harder to engage with?
Not necessarily, but it's not as marketable. Like, say if you write, so this would be kind of the way I see one of the kind of main inspirations for this in Gorillaz. You have a lot of, you have some really poppy, mainstream, accessible music in things like the Pink Phantom or whatever the Elton John tune is that was off that more recent record, or the animations, or Demon Days. Those songs that everyone knows. But then you have these other songs which are really obscure, but are really interesting, in that same catalogue. And so, and also from artists that you've never heard of before. So I kind of, our audience would be those who can see, everyone, someone who is into something like Feel Good, and then something some people that might be into some of the more obscure stuff like Pac-Man for songs.
So defining an audience like that is so broad as to be useless.
I know that's what I'm saying. Like I know how I'd like to serve music, but I don't really know mechanically how we go about that.
Yeah. Well,
I think, as you say, we need to start smaller.
Yeah. The thinking is that by identifying fairly specific people, or fairly specific audiences, is that you can tailor things more, right? And you make them, they recognize, you make things that they will recognize themselves in, and then because you and they have shared commonalities, they will champion you because you're one of them, you're one of their people.
Which is an idea that I'm really about. Like, I am about this idea of community and people finding each other through shared interests or shared experience.
Yeah.
I'm really about that, even though we may never meet some of the people that might find us. I got into music originally personally. Maybe this will help with the goal, like with how we go about this. Like, personally, I got into music in my little manifesto that I have in my journal every day, which says something along the lines of I want to make music that moves people like other people's music has moved me. One of the biggest things I took away from my favorite artists like Yonsei, the Gorillaz, Daft Punk, Snarky Puppy, Jacob Collier, these people, there are pieces of music that they've written or performed that have really, really hit me in the heart in a really great way, and they've allowed me to kind of break out of some of the shit that happens in the world, and that's really important to me. And I want to be able to produce, personally, I want to be able to produce stuff that does that for other people. So again, very broad goal personally, but much more applicable when it comes to like making choices when you're making music and presenting social media angles.
Yeah. Well, that's, I guess, the first part of when you're talking about moving people.
Yeah.
Like by defining an audience, you're also defining what's important to them.
Yeah.
And so you can engage in a much more straightforward way with that exact idea of making someone feel seen.
Yeah.
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 That's the goal.
That is the goal.
So social media.
Social media.
Social media. Now,
what's next? What do we do?
Okay, so having defined those two things, the meta-narrative that we want to tell and the goals that we want to achieve, it gives us a very strong sense of input and output. What should the result be, and what is the thing that we're actually going to produce around? So that puts us in a very strong position to be thinking about the type of things we can put out into the world. Now, the trouble that I've seen in working with artists is that there's a lot of opinions about what good looks like in social media and what success looks like.
I don't like either of those words very much.
Well, that's why definitions are important and being granular, because that's not good, that is good.
Well, success in particular.
Unhelpful.
Like success, that's why I use the word sustainable a lot when we're talking about careers. A successful career is defined by the individual, the cultural kind of identity of that individual. So if they haven't really thought about it, success for a lot of people in this capitalist world tends to be how big their bloody wallet is or bank account is. So I prefer to use the term sustainable because, like, for us, one of the biggest goals is being able to come back tomorrow and do this again. And I guess that word sustainable has defined the word success for us. Good and bad are problematic just because...
Yeah, they're garbage.
They're garbage and subjective, and they actually have no real value in making decisions around your own art or whatever, which just goes back to that intention conversation that we were having in the first half. It's pointless.
Yeah.
In
a lot of ways, if people outside of your own little circle of making things is opposed to what you're doing, it is telling you outright, this is bad, don't do this, it's probably an indication that you're
onto something.
That you're onto something. Yeah. That's right. Because the stronger someone feels opposition to it, the stronger someone else is going to feel positively about it.
Except for Nazism.
Well, like, yeah, objective. There are objective things within this as well, but looking at things like punk music, looking at things like just outsider art in general. You know, I think it's once we get into politics, it becomes hairy. But
there's some cool artists who kind of dance on that line, which is quite cool. Like what's socially acceptable and what's not, kind of lines that which I find incredibly interesting. Like I can't remember the name of the collective, but they bought a hand drawn picture from some really famous artist that was worth a fortune. They bought it for $35,000 or something, and then they got a computer, figured out how to copy it perfectly with like a 3D drawer, and then they produced 999 more, and then they sold them all for $10 each, including the original. And so someone out there might have the original, but no one really knows.
Yeah, right.
And
interesting.
And that, for me, dances along this line. There's some kind of political ideas in there. There's some artistic, what is art kind of ideas in there, and piss a lot of people off in the process, I'm sure. You should read Walter Benjamin, Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction. I think I have read that.
Great little long form essay.
There you go. Walter Benjamin.
All dem Benjamins.
Yeah, all the Benjamins.
So anyway, what the trouble that I
sorry for
derailing.
Right.
It was a good derailing.
Yes.
It was a good kind of derailing. So the trouble that I've seen with artists that we've worked with is that the social media presence seems to be very like reductivist and searching for this repeatable formula of,
and sporadic at best.
Well, even if it's not, it falls into this this treadmill of content that is not advancing goals and not telling story. Like it's just done because it's perfunctory. I've been told that I need to do this. I understand that the people who are successful in my sphere and in the way that I want to be successful do this, and then it becomes emulation, and it's this kind of it becomes the allegory of the clock tower, that the guy who sets the clock tower is looking at the watchmaker in town to set the clock, and the watchmaker is looking at the clock tower to set his clocks in the window, and they don't know it, and the time just keeps drifting and drifting and drifting. And that's what's happening. You get this kind of echo chamber of garbage because the people around you are going, oh, I've got to post some stuff. I'm posting XYZ.
Which some might argue is basically a considerable amount of social media.
It definitely is. It absolutely is. But it's also like the worst part of social media in terms of it doesn't advance anyone's goals, and it doesn't tell an effective story. So
do you think the lack of goal setting before kind of coming, like personal artistic goal setting from these artists that we worked with, that lack of understanding of their own art, do you think that contributed to the fact that they couldn't engage with it, couldn't be consistent, and couldn't?
I mean, yes and no. It's almost certainly a multifactorial thing, because you also have the opposite side of the story. You look at a lot of corporate social media, and they have goals defined out the wazoo, and the content is still trash because it's it's telling a very rigid story with no interest in what the customer base experience is. It's very much about pushing a story and achieving those goals in a kind of ruthless way, and so there's no room for engagement. So there's this kind of squidgy middle ground, where the coming back to what we were talking about meta narratives the other day, about it's an equal sided equation. It's the stuff that you're putting in and the stuff that the audience is putting in, and you are trying to create this cyclical relationship that is it has elements of the clock the clock tower and the watchmaker setting each other's clocks. Like, you have to react to the stuff that's going on, but it can't be only that. It needs to have these other wider external inputs as well. So the typical kind of approach with social media that is said, like, if you were to Google something like if you were to Google something like what is good social media for artists, or artists, social media artists content calendar, or something to that effect, you'll get pretty similar results, and it will be broken down into things like lifestyle content, really gimmicky stuff like you sit on a train and sing your song, or mime your thing, or go out to a lake, or
which is something that we've told artists to do in the past.
Yeah, and this is all fine. I'm not saying that this is like a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is formulaic.
Yeah.
And in the search for something formulaic, you get something formulaic.
Yeah.
You get a particular flavor. So lifestyle content, gimmicky, trendy stuff, as well as your produced content, the stuff that you want to be pushing out into the world. Your music, your film clips, your photo shoots of yourself, some mix of the things. And it makes sense that is the bulk of what your social media is going to look like, because those are the tools that are given to you. You can post pictures, so you're going to post pictures. You can post video, so you're going to post the videos that you make. But there's a deeper way to do this as well, and this is also what I've advocated to artists that we've worked with. Is what you're in an ideal world, what you're looking to do is bridge that gap between the meta narrative that you want to be telling, the art that you've got, that you've made, and the stuff that's happening in the wider world using those tools, right? So there's very concrete ways of doing that, which is going to be the backbone of our strategy, right? So for the next little section, I'd like to try something new on the stream, if you'd go along with us, which is to hop up on the Blackboard and do a little brainstorm.
I'm keen.
On stream. We've done plenty of these off stream.
Off stream, but we've never done one on.
So let's see if I can manage the cognitive load of.
I'm sure you can.
Being in front of a camera.
Oh, I can narrate
as well as writing things down.
I'll ask questions
and knowing things.
Yeah. Yeah, just push your mic out of the way there. And you just like spin it around so it's out of the frame. Yeah, just like that. There you go. And
hello.
He's going to use that one so that he can stand up.
Okay.
There we go.
Cool. Okay.
So where do we start with this? I want to ask a question first, because the what was up on there last week was very much a plan for an individual track which had some social media kind of elements to it. What we're doing today is more of a broad macro look at what social media present means to us. Is that's what we're doing today, right? It's more of a macro overview, or
it's a very macro strategic overview of what we're doing.
Yeah. So where do we start with something like this?
Well, I mean, we've already started, because we've defined the goals.
Yeah.
And the meta narrative part. So anything that branches, I want you to imagine a third layer to this thing. So anything that branches off this, is going to be overlaid with a goal that it achieves.
Yep.
And part of the meta narrative tail that is that it advances.
Yep.
So we've got. I want to be thinking about things like events out in the world that we can be engaging with and putting a spin on.
Yeah.
So, for example, like one that popped to mind when just before the stream, when we were putting out show notes, was we've got the Olympics coming up, right?
Yes.
So if we put out a little thing here and we go Olympics.
Maybe that's what I Got Mine should be.
Potentially, yeah.
It does have that kind of champion thing going on.
It does, yeah. So with the Olympics,
Yes.
that's an event that's going to be happening in the world
Yep.
that lots of people are going to be interested in talking about. Lots of people are going to be interested in finding ways that they're going to be personally invested in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
How can we deepen their personal investment?
Yep.
How can we soundtrack it effectively?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So what in our meta narrative do you think ties into the Olympics?
Oh, you're asking me hard questions, man. I guess the chasing dreams thing is a big one.
Chasing dreams.
You're not really looking behind the curtain. I don't think there's a never-ending sleepover energy. There's the fear, like dream chasing and fear of failure. Not even necessarily fear of failure, but just failure in general. Because, only one person wins a gold medal at the Olympics.
No one remembers who came second.
Nope. No one remembers unless, I guess, did Eddie the Eel win no, he didn't win a gold medal, but he won a race, conveniently.
Uh-huh.
Oh, mate, the Aussie ice skater.
Bradbury.
Was that his name? The ice skater? I watched that race live. It was fucking amazing.
But he did win the gold.
He did win the gold, but he won the gold.
Who came second? Nobody knows who came
Probably the guy who should have come first in the first place.
What I love about that story is there's such a tall poppy syndrome thing baked into Australian culture that we are so willing to believe that he was a terrible skater.
No, he wasn't.
And he wasn't.
He was in the fucking final.
Great skater.
He was one of 4 people in the fucking final, or 5 people, however many in those speed skating races. So he was the top 5 in the world at that point in time,
Yeah. And it overcome significant injury to get there and all sorts of
stuff. And then
just phenomenal.
But part of and I guess it's part of the music industry too. Part of the Olympics is this element of luck. You can, like we were talking about, was it on the stream or before the stream? The whole thing about when you can have a good plan, and then as soon as you get into the theater of war, that's all going to go to shit.
It's all out the window. Yeah,
it's all out the window. And it's the same thing with the Olympics. Like athletes can train their whole lives to get to a position where they could potentially win a gold medal and become a champion of the world. And then just like with Bradbury, shit goes down and you might have been at the front, but now you're at the back and suck shit, basically.
Yeah.
So
now, as I said, I want you to imagine that this part of it, really, like if we were going to write it all out, it would get huge if we did that for all of them. So I want in future, I'm not going to write these. I'm going to put like a little bracket around these ones. So all the other stuff that branches off, we won't be writing that.
Yeah.
But we want to be thinking about it in relation to how we bridge the gap. So the stuff that will be branching off this, so we'll have like Olympics as a concept.
Yep.
But then you want to come up with the actual
content pieces
thing that's going to bridge the gap between the dream chasing that we're doing and the dream chasing that's going on in the wider world, and the dream chasing that people engaging in the wider social circle
giving me anxiety right now
are wanting to do in their lives.
Yeah.
So you can point to ourselves and go, we're chasing this dream. We're having a phone call with such and such who's over there chasing their dreams. What are ways that you've chased your dreams? We can be doing this on lots of different levels. There's lots of different avenues into this idea. Ways that people have failed. I once did some content pieces around this sort of stuff in financial services companies.
Oh yeah.
The biggest ways that you fucked up.
Yeah.
So within the customer base, there's lots of cool stories that came out of that. Anyway, long stories, but this sort of stuff, this kind of highlighting that failure is, failure is not an option; it's a lifestyle.
I mean, I think if you're chasing dreams, failure is a huge part of it.
Absolutely, it's a part of it.
Like you're going to fail more times than you succeed. I mean, the Olympics is really a kind of testament to that. Yeah. There's the people who didn't even make it to the Olympics in the first place.
Totally. But this source of, like, we're coming at it through the event, but talking about failure and the ways that people you could produce content for the rest of your life around finding people who have failed in spectacular ways and talking to them, and how that failure has positively affected their life or whatever. This stuff is, there's never a like the idea of not having content to post is bizarre.
Insane. Yeah.
You know, there is so much content out there when you start breaking it down in these sort of ways.
So how do we join these ideas together? Is that what we're doing next with this particular thing, or are we just going off with other ideas that are happening?
Well, I mean, so we're gonna end up with our first layer, which will be these specific.
So we'll start
things.
with the first layer stuff.
Well, we can build them out as we're doing them as well. But then the next layer out will be the specific stuff that we want to consider doing. Like, so for Olympics, it'll be something like. In fact, I'm just going to rub this off.
How dare you? How dare you bring order into the chaos? Be careful not to go too high. People won't be able to see. It's all right. We can post.
Just good life advice.
Yeah. Tall poppy, you'll get cut off.
Oh, yes, don't get too high.
Yep.
So, where am I? Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, don't worry. If you don't see it, we'll post a picture later.
Anyway, so off this, it would be good to identify specific people that we can speak to. I don't know if we're going to get a Stephen Bradbury, but let's write him down, right? So.
The thing for me is, I mean, I understand, you know, we're almost producing our own set of content here when we're talking about these ideas.
But, well, yes, but, you know, there's also different levels to this. Is it an interview with Stephen Bradbury? Is it just like a photo of him with some writing over the top and the song playing?
And the song playing, yeah.
You know, the way that, like, but it's all about circling around the concept and bringing people in. So and it can come from lots of different things. So when you're talking about a song specifically,
what about musician Olympians? That would be cool.
Musician Olympians. Did you know that music was an event in the Olympics back in like the 30s or something?
Yeah. That'd be cool.
Yeah. So there's retrospective content, so we can do that.
Yeah. I like that idea. Music, the Olympic sport. How the hell do they judge that shit? I guess it's just like any of the other more creative Olympic sports, like dressage and rhythmic gymnastics. And I guess diving too has those kind of more esoteric measurement methods.
There's also things around. So the Olympics will be producing lots of their own media. So they've got mascots. They'll have some kind of theme music. They'll have.
We could produce our own theme song, alternate Olympic theme for Paris 2024.
Yeah. Which you can imagine very easily how that would be tied to larger social causes. You know, the Parisians love a riot or two or a demonstration. So what are the causes that they have been rallying against, and how does that fit into the context of the Olympics?
The IOC would probably be one of them. Going into a country and stitching it up. An alternative, theme, music theme. Yeah, I can get behind that. I mean, you know, you could do it in a negative, well, not a negative way. You could do it in a satirical way, or you could do it in an actual genuinely serious way. Because I remember the Whitlams, an Australian band, did a song for the World Cup back in the early noughties. Run for Your Life.
So was that? Do you think that was some kind of accident?
No, it was an anthem. It was on it was a record, an actual CD that you could buy. That was the music that I bought because I liked that song. It was the only place to get it back then when there was no streaming.
Sure.
And it had, you know, it was a compilation record basically, you know. So
I look pretty wacky under this light.
A playlist. Oh yeah, you look like you're gonna get beamed up.
Anyway,
you can turn that one off.
Well, I mean, we need to be able to see the board, I guess.
True. Yeah, it's fine.
Didn't
think that through.
One to clean up next time.
Yeah.
But you know, this stuff just doesn't come out of thin air.
Nah.
You know, it's not like someone from the Whitlams woke up one morning and went, "Oh, let's do a bloody anthem for the World Cup." And it's also not as
it
if
was 100%. It was 100% a marketing thing from Rugby Australia for sure.
Yeah,
or whatever the international rugby organisation's called. Yeah.
And in that case, it's coming from the other way. It's like, well, how do we connect? We've got this audience of people who are interested in this band, who are interested in music, who are potential fans of this sporting event that we're doing.
Yeah.
How do we reach them?
Yeah.
Well, we reach them through music. We're doing the opposite.
So we're going back the other way.
Yeah, we're going, we have this music, we have this story to tell about us.
Mm-hmm.
We have these potential fans that exist out in these spaces. How do we access them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? How do we do an interesting thing for them?
This is hard.
That connects them to us.
I find this hard.
You find this hard?
Yes.
It gets a lot easier.
I found it easier with the more specific stuff like what we were doing with.
But it gets specific.
Yeah, I know it does.
Specific.
I know it does.
And so this very quickly gets into something that we spoke about before, which is doing these as part of not our art music releases, as part of just what we're thinking of as the equivalent of rehearsal.
Yep.
Is like is making music covers, original little things. This could just be a minute long. It doesn't have to be.
Oh,
massive.
we could do like that thing. Well, I mean, one of the things that this connects to culture as well. So one of the things that Fred again did across COVID was he was taking some of the samples he was using out of social media videos. So we could potentially sample commentary or no, but even like the hits or the entering of the water or like just little sound bites like that into musical tracks. Use found sound in a musical way. So you could do the same thing as what Fred again has done, where he takes the words that people are saying and turns them into lyrics, or which has been done by other people as well.
Yeah.
Or you could take the sounds, which is more like something that Bonobo or Caribou might do, or Tycho, or one of those kind of instrumental, kind of pop, alternative jam kind of dudes would do, and turn it into, like a brand new kind of found sound work, you know, around that theme, which might be cool, like the thwack of an arrow entering a target. Those kinds of sounds are kind of cool.
Yeah.
That would be around that other stuff, and you wouldn't release it necessarily. Just use it as silly social media content.
Yeah. But even the something that happens a lot on social media, and it's a way into this is recuts, right? So you'll take for musicians particularly, or people just who like music, you take a piece of film.
Yep.
And instead of the soundtrack that would normally exist under that film, you might keep the dialogue or whatever, find a way to separate it using AI tools or something.
Which you can definitely do.
And then put a new soundtrack underneath it. Whether that's, you find some creators who do that through Foley. They're sitting there in front of a drum kit with a bunch of stuff and they're bling, bling, ding, ding, bang, dang, redoing the Foley sounds of the scene. Or, but you also find it where people put maybe like contemporary music under an old black and white film or something, and it creates this new sense of emotional connection, emotional response to the scene that you're seeing. The Olympics is going to be another a space where there's going to be so much of that. There's slow motion replays and things like that. Where in the 2000 Olympics, you always had that. Dun, 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 dun. The what's that from?
Da, 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 that one.
Yeah. What's the?
Is it
Chariots of Fire?
Yeah.
Precisely. So that was the classic then, and it probably still gets used.
Oh, it would be, sure.
Do we write something that is like we go on a little journey. We do a 5-part social media odyssey on the writing the perfect replay sports piece of music.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Write that down. That's a good idea. That'd be a whole session. That'd be fun. Alternative slow-mo. Yeah, I can get behind that. That's cool.
And in fact, that's something that that Matt has done. He in the piece of work that he did with Element and.
Oh yeah, that's true. He did something like that, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's this sort of stuff exists out in the world already, but it's how do you connect it in? You know, it's about doing, and in terms of advancing our goals, right? This is big tick for the doing interesting stuff. Doing interesting collaborations.
That's the most interesting thing that I've kind of come across so far in this. Like,
okay, so we'll put a little asterisk.
Like all of this stuff, and I would argue that it probably feels a bit weird to some artists as well. This feels weird to me. Yeah, like it hasn't really hit. Like the Olympics as an organisation, I have some personal kind of not grievances, but personal experience with, and so for me, whenever I see that word, it's not necessarily a positive connotation.
Sure,
you know.
Yeah.
So let's. Can we try a different idea?
We can, but it's also important to note that in a brainstorming session, you're probably going to throw about 90% of it away.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of this stuff is not going to make the final cut.
I guess what I'm saying is, like, from I'm being the layman here, or the viewer, or the artist that we're talking to, and this would be kind of a point where I'd turn around and go, I don't want to do this anymore. You know, because it does have negative feelings attached to it, or at least challenging.
Just specifically about the Olympics in this.
Well, I don't know. We'll find out when we go on to the next thing. Yeah, like it feels kind of a bit shilly in a way, you know. And I guess,
but again, like, well, everything is.
Yes.
For starters, but it's also about, like, I'm just going to look at my my notes about our goals here.
Yeah.
Right. So, in terms of. So we look at that one. Let's look at that one specifically, the alternate slow-mo replay song. Right?
See, that's fun.
So
like I find that quite silly and.
But
fun.
we have to go through this process to uncover that stuff. You couldn't just pull that out of thin air.
No.
So let's just look at these ones. In terms of streams, it gives us something that can be streamed.
Yeah, and can be used multiple times.
Can be used a lot.
Yeah.
It gives us something that can have financial repercussions because it can be used on platforms like TikTok and Instagram or whatever, that there will be some level of streaming kickback. And if it gets used widely enough, then it can go further still and be used in broadcasts where we will then receive larger royalties if we do a good enough job, capture enough of the imagination. The interesting stuff, obviously.
You could mix that with Stephen Bradbury's win.
Absolutely, you could.
And you could have a nice slow-mo event of all the people falling down.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
So that's an even more specific thing, right? It's the slow-mo sound, but not the slow-mo sound of the person crossing the finish line. It's the slow-mo sound of failure.
Yeah. Well, it adds satire as well, because it's like taking the piss out of all the poor. I mean, it's taking the piss out of the event itself.
Yeah.
And just the luck component. Okay,
so
I like this idea. I've just joined them all together. We've got our bit of content for the Olympics.
Right. So, okay. And of course, the being an expert, like, we can display the path of thinking that leads us here.
Well, see, suddenly now that feels really exciting to me. Because it takes the piss. Like I'm a massive fan of Thundercat and Lewis Cole, so taking the piss out of the things that you're doing in the area that you're doing them is very attractive to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's one.
Okay.
So and so we're looking at this first layer. Let's focus on events.
Things,
So events.
The U.S. election.
U.S. election? That's definitely an event. U.S. election.
I mean, that's kind of early next year, or is it later in the year? Is it November or is it
November.
February? Okay. Oh, no, February is the inauguration. Yeah, that's right.
U.S. election.
Okay, all right.
And also people is the other thing to keep in mind. Like people attach ideas to people. So
what? Yeah, okay.
So things that it's things that are in the public eye, things that people are going through. So these can be, these are all obviously big. This affects everyone in the US and also everyone who happens to have an internet connection, because it's going to be all
everywhere
we hear for ages. This is also quite big, but it can be much closer. You can go
they're big.
You can talk about things like having a kid, like funerals, like marriages, whatever. Like these are events that people go through in much more disconnected, sporadic ways. They don't have to be necessarily like a giant thing. Just there's a segment of my audience who at any one time are going to be getting married. This rolling segment, right?
Yeah. Well, okay.
Or just like life events.
We kind of, in a way, I guess we play with that in the individual songs, right? Can we kind of put
totally
that, like?
So
I'm just
even
trying
things
to,
like just getting up in the morning, getting yourself a cup of coffee.
But would that become a first layer thing, or would that become a thing that's more micro and associated with the individual track?
You can do it either way.
Because I think, like, with these two examples that we've got here currently, they kind of suggest their own, either an original track that engages with that idea, or like a supplementary track that is really only for the social media part.
I mean, both of those are valid approaches.
Yeah, and I personally am not, we don't really currently write satirical songs, so it would seem a bit weird for us to write an original that's a satirical take on something. But doing like our own version, a Chariots of Fire kind of modern, like not a version, but you know what I mean, like a new song that is the next the advancement of that particular part of the cultural conversation is kind of fits into the original idea.
Yeah, you know, just thinking about this and say when you said a satirical version of Chariots of Fire, you know what popped into my mind is, you know, how people do the
like Peter Griffin.
Oh God. No,
that would be funny though.
Similar idea. So
sorry,
people do it with the Titanic song, and then suddenly it's played out of like a shitty plastic record.
Oh yeah.
For that same energy of like, I thought this was going to be really good.
Naturally, there's I can't remember the track that gets used for that on social media.
Yeah, it's like a Celine Dion.
Yeah.
But you know, to do that, to have like you have the first little couple of bars of a really well done Chariots of Fire, and then it breaks down into this awful like.
Yeah, I can't remember what that is. The track that they use for that on
it's whatever. It's from Titanic.
Is
it's
it?
that.
Yeah.
My Heart Will Go On, I guess, is what it's called.
Is it? I don't know if that's the song I'm thinking. I think we're definitely thinking of different songs.
Anyway, you know, so that would be, you could knock that over in like an hour. But it wouldn't achieve a lot of what we're talking about. It wouldn't be particularly interesting. It wouldn't be something that establishes people as any one of us as an expert in anything. It'd get a chuckle. It doesn't have really financial inputs and outputs.
Well, I mean, just thinking, leaving stable jobs to chase a dream. Like the dream chasing thing is a big thing, and then we're
talking about the U.S. election?
No.
We've found our way back to Olympics.
I don't know if becoming the U.S. president is something that anyone who's aspiring to be the president of the U.S. probably shouldn't be the president.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, whoever wants to captain the ship, not fit to be a captain.
Not fit to be a captain. Yeah. You know, like you talk about someone like Biden who's had, you know, a wife and kid die and another son die of brain cancer, and I think recently one of his sons just got convicted and is going to prison, or you know, something along those lines.
Great.
But you know, he's taken it on the chin, and he's making hay out of it instead of falling into the depths. But you know, someone like Trump would be, you know, pardoning people left, right, and center. And
so let's move this on.
I'm just trying to think. So well, maybe you've got an idea in your head, because for me, this is all I haven't really. I'm finding it really hard to engage with this idea of this particular brainstorm.
Well, I think fear of failure is quite large. Like there's a reason that there's so much of the discourse is so intense, is because failure means all the time that you've spent building up the kind of financial and media approaches to getting these messages out is wasted. You know, you don't get that back.
I think both of these kind of first level ideas, or second level, whatever you want to call them, ideas for me are problematic because they're both quite political, and I personally don't like politics in music.
Okay. So shall we rub off US election?
No, I think have it there because it's interesting because there might be something cool and satirical that comes out of it. But I think I'd like to try some other ideas.
I think there's something quite nerdy that can come out of it. Like, looking at the... I think going down the satire route is fine. Everyone involved in this little project is clever enough to do good satire. But it's also very hit and miss in general. Like, even people who are quite good at satire and good at producing satirical content still trip over their own ankles, and it's very time consuming. So,
to do it well, it's quite time consuming.
Yeah, and we're only interested in doing it well because doing it poorly is
a waste of time. Yeah.
So, but I think there's a lot of for me the big things that come out of this is like around like an election or something would be the nerdiness and the peeking behind the curtain, like the understanding and trying to look at parallels between the kind of those intense analytics that come out of elections and like election graphics, you know, where you've got like the various bar charts and like maps and whatever else. Like, what would the musical equivalent of that look like? You know, do you just to even look at like talk to bands that have toured extensively or whatever, and look at the stats and see if we can't render some of those stats out.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
Like a spin on election graphics.
Yeah.
You know,
that'd be cool.
Because people are going to be seeing all these election graphics on their screen, then suddenly there's this. What's this?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, well, you could just pick any old famous band that's done big US tours, like Taylor Swift, for instance, would be a kind of lovely example here.
Yeah, great. Anything that we can get data on.
Yeah, like...
I don't know if we'd necessarily be able to get enough data, but maybe.
Well, who knows? Like, I don't think that Live Nation or whoever supports her tours would be giving out that information left, right and centre unless it was benefit to them.
But you could maybe get, like, ticket sales by state or something like that, or a number of times toured in the different things, or... There'd be angles to get data on. It's part of what made all this stuff around like the private jet travel stuff interesting, is because there was data.
Well, you can't get that data anymore.
No.
New bill and all that. So you can't chase those people who have private jets around anymore.
Yeah,
it's a shame.
For safety.
Yeah, it's not the safety. It's
but
the bloody.
So. I think there's nerdy content that comes out of this.
Okay, I can get behind that. Nerdiness.
So like, charts plus graphs.
Can we put a specific idea around, say, artists? You know, like an artist election kind of style thing. You know, artists touring, or you know, record sales across a career, or you could totally do that with someone like Johnny Cash or Frank Zappa or something. You could do charts across their career of their popularity.
Yeah.
That would be kind of cool. I'm sure people have done it, to be honest.
Well, maybe. But the
easy content. Steal it. Borrow.
But so this ties into some of this stuff. And also, if we're talking about establishing ourselves as experts, like a deep understanding of what's important in an artist's career and being able to render that as something tangible that's like big tick for that. It's interesting because it's it's this spin on on something that people are going to be seeing. They're going to be seeing graphics from news stations and things like that.
What about...
it doesn't necessarily do financial or streams necessarily. Maybe it could achieve some of the second level stuff of goals around like establishing larger followerships in things. But you can get to this point and go, maybe this isn't the most fertile ground for us. It's not the best way for us to spend our time because it doesn't help us do those in the same way that this does.
Well, this is certainly difficult. Let's quickly. We've got about 10-ish.
Okay.
20 minutes. We've still got 20 minutes.
So much like a lot of what we've done, this it will serve as like a demonstration of the overarching
let's
idea.
Let's do some speed running around the first level stuff, and then we see if we can't develop a few more of those out.
Okay.
So you were mentioning we've got 2 big events up there, which are in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
What are some other kind of general areas that we should focus on? Let's just like rattle them off quickly, so we've got some ideas about thinking about where to pull these ideas from.
Okay, so we're looking at like areas of interest for people, right? So we're talking like if there's overlap within something like we're going to be doing a film clip or something, right? And it's about 90s, like, or nostalgia for the 90s or something, you know. So we might go, well, lots of people are feeling this sort of nostalgia. We're going to be making a film clip. What's one of the areas that they feel this stuff about? It might be something like fashion. So you might go like, let's just say like fashion is something that people care about and are thinking about, right? So then it could be something like, you know, one of the things that I often think about is how can we collaborate with other people cross-discipline, so other artists in different disciplines, and so it could be that we commission band jackets or something like that. And we go through the process of commissioning Fright's jackets for ourselves.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm just finding difficult to kind of wrap my head around is how you go from, like, how you make the decision to, like, because for me that what you just did then felt quite
like I was skipping like 10 steps in between.
Yeah. What I'm struggling with, and what I suspect other people might struggle with, is like you've got this thing in the middle that says social media strategy. We've got these ideas here around meta narrative. We've got these goals that we've set. And I guess this is where the word creativity comes in that you don't like, is how you pull these first tier or first order ideas out.
Well, because it's keep in mind this is a brainstorm.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
So it's all about as much volume as possible.
But my problem is that I don't have in there to out. You know, I like when you just said cross-discipline stuff, all right? Like, that's obviously one of our kind of ground level goals, right?
Well, let's put it in as a first thing.
Like cross-discipline collaboration and what that might look like based on broader social things. Because at the moment, most of our collaboration is with musicians.
Yeah. Well, let's list out some other disciplines
that we're interested. Well, fashion for me is quite interesting,
so
which we've already got, but let's just pop it down there. Yeah. For me, poetry, I guess, is another one. Writing. You know, poets and writers. Yeah, like I reckon both of those kind of fit under the same thing. There's an idea that comes out there that, for me, like, let me just continue.
Go on.
Because we're quite both of us are quite interested in lyrics. We're quite interested in broad social kind of like quotes and ideas and platitudes and truths and things like that. So we're like collaborating with a poet or a writer who is an expert in a certain area. Like I'm just trying to think who might be. I'm not going to use him because you don't like him. I'm just trying to think of someone who's semi-famous who writes a lot.
Just give me the name. I don't care if I like him or not.
No, I'm not going to write it. I'm trying to think of Aussies, to be honest.
Tim Winton.
Yeah, whatever. I just to have them write lyrics for us to write a song to would be cool. The other option.
So to find a poet or a writer who's never written lyrics and get them to write lyrics.
Yes.
All right.
And the other option is also setting writing to music. You know, so like the old way of writing arias and something that is still quite common, but not as common as it used to be in the music world. And so this reaches back into the past too, so it can kind of cross-contaminate with other disciplines like classical music or jazz. You've got this tradition of composers setting poems or writing to music in operas or arias or whatever.
This also happens
slam poetry. you know, like Tank and the Bangers. That band is basically a band of slam poets, you know, and the way that they perform it is in that very stage slam poetry manner. And you could argue that like a lot of Tim Minchin's stuff is very stage show poetry driven, you know.
Yeah, but doing an improvised music session with the slam poet and everyone's responding to everyone else would be cool. Would be interesting.
Yeah, I'd find that quite, because that immediately integrates with ideas that we're talking about. Another one that comes to mind, given that we've got this idea of a faceless band as a kind of goal, is the use of artists, like visual artists and graphic artists, to kind of collaborate with us in a character sense, in a similar way to Gorillaz might, you know, like we want to do a little ghosty thing together. Let's do a little ghosty thing. Or I don't have a more direct way, but you know, like there is a tradition of this already, you know. Ghost iconography, that would be cool. There could become like some kind of guerrilla visual arts stuff, which is something that's really appealing to me, like your Banksy and this other group that I was talking about earlier in the stream with the, you know, the bit of art that they reproduced.
I just wanted to tell a quick little story about this setting writing to music thing.
Sure.
Don't quote me, I think Sophie Tucker is the band. But these two musicians both realised they liked this same Portuguese poet. Neither of them could speak Portuguese.
Lovely.
So they learnt Portuguese so that they could set this poem to music, which I think is very dedicated. But this sort of stuff happens in modern times too. And like Nick Cave, there's all these examples that pour out of that. And there's no reason that you can't literally take someone's writing that exists out in the world
and just do
and just do it.
Yeah.
And go, we really love this poem. This week for social media content, we're going to turn this song into a song.
Yeah, and I think there's implications there for copyright and stuff, but that's something to figure out later on. But or not necessarily later on, but something we'll talk about later on.
I mean, again, it's something that we have to think about the copyright implications if we put it onto streaming platforms. If it's us doing effectively a dramatic reading of then it doesn't matter. We're not selling it.
No, that's true. What about so we've got poets, writers, visual artists, and visual artists is a very broad category. You know, guerrilla artists would be another thing that I'm interested in, just because of that subvertive.
I'm just gonna write street art, but
yeah, that's fine. Yep.
I also want to write chefs in here, by the way.
Oh yeah, food. Yeah, food was one that had kind of popped up way back. Food, even food porn would be its own first layer thing, I think. Honestly, food porn is like a first layer thing, because people on social, like the kind of one of the things that I personally consume a lot on social media is effectively food porn. Which is, you know, it's either people doing ridiculous recipes that you would never eat or never make because they taste like shit, or going to restaurants, going out and you know, exploring street food and things like that. You know, I find that to be quite an engaging area. And you were talking about more common areas like marriage or having kids or whatever, which aren't huge kind of draws for me, but that I couldn't really think of anything, but something like that I could think of something to do regularly.
Tell me about where it fits into our meta narrative. Why is food porn important?
It kind of has like a wonder thing, like it has this kind of Wizard of Oz kind of Peter Pan energy thing to it. To me,
when you see people just like eating whimsical stuff.
Yeah.
So it's tied into whimsy.
Yeah, it's whimsy and.
I'm just gonna write that down.
Yeah. The other thing might be that, you know, like food is a part of everyone's lives and people connect food with experiences, and so kind of for us that could be something around the idea of the never-ending sleepover, like finding food that you would eat at the never-ending sleepover and setting music to it or something like that. like very, very, very low level idea. Perhaps if let me think of the goals. You know, I think from an audience perspective, anything where you produce music and food together suddenly becomes quite broad audience. Everyone eats. That's the great thing about food. Everyone eats. So, and if you don't, you're a fucking liar.
I just drink that Soylent stuff.
Soylent Green. There's something there. There's something in that. The was there a commercial for Soylent Green in that film?
I don't know, but there is a product that you can buy called Soylent. Which is
it's that
meal replacement.
Silicon Valley thing.
Yeah.
That's just a goop of
nutritional goop.
Nutrient goop, which is for the very efficient person out there. Same thing every day.
Get your goop on.
No, we're not doing that. So I think.
Yeah,
can we write down?
That's really great. Like the whole because jingles for restaurants, chain restaurants, is a thing that has always existed and will continue to exist.
Well, there's a social media idea there.
Yeah, exactly. Jingles for foods that don't exist or something like that.
Yeah.
Like jingles for whimsical, silly food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm down with that. There's plenty of it out there. I mean, there's that crazy chocolatier guy who makes those ridiculous sculptures, and then, I don't know. There's so many people producing content, and I guess if we're talking about extending our surface area this could fit into the category of cross-discipline collabs as well, because you're talking about working with social media creators who create food content. And then it might be that you're producing a jingle for the food that they've made,
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Or something along those lines. There's an angle there.
Yeah.
Let's not go too deep into that.
Well, I think we've kind of displayed the kind of the path.
Yeah.
Now it's about off stream. We'll fill this out further.
We might even depending on how we go, we might even continue it off stream and then continue it on the stream next week, because there's still some stuff that I'm trying to unpack here.
Percolating.
Yeah. Like, I can see how this might directly contribute to an individual track where you've got a bit more of a granular kind of idea of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But in a broad, this is what we stand for as a creative group of people, Frights, and how we're producing this content across, culture. It's still not quite it's not quite,
Well, that's all right. We'll do a part 2.
I think we should. Would you like to have some closing statements?
Oh, I might go sit down.
Yeah, sit down, and then we'll do like a couple more minutes, just kind of breaking down.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well.
Breaking it down. He's back. I'll put this down. There we go.
The biggest closing statements that come to mind is that chalk was terrible, and
it makes sense. It's fine.
Please excuse my my bad handwriting. The chalk was.
This is why we went to whiteboards.
Threatening to break on me the whole time, but.
Yeah, that's all right.
I'll use the nice,
the big fat stuff.
Yeah, I'll use the nice big ones next time.
That's all right.
That's a lot better.
So, let me start. So, I'll just continue on what I was saying before. This was quite, compared to what we did the other day around the individual track, this was quite challenging because, as you say, I've got, other than this kind of meta-narrative stuff that we've started to develop and the broad goals that we've developed before that, my brain still hasn't quite frame of referenced it.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest, if we kind of compare this to, say, artists that we've worked with in the past, this is where it all starts breaking down for people, I think, because you've got really massive, we talk about eating the elephant a bite at a time, but there's this other perspective on that, which is you still have a fucking elephant worth of bites to consume, right? Which is very much, it's not something I think about because I'm committed to this and really want to make this work for me. So that I don't really think about that stuff, but I can see, an artist who really is emotionally engaged with what they're doing, getting very overwhelmed very quickly, even by the small. I've worked a lot on my emotional maturity, and this was painful in a way. Like, this was hard, emotionally for me.
Yeah.
And I can see other artists having that same problem.
It's also worth keeping in mind that compared to what we did before, the last time we did a Blackboard session together,
yes,
this is one step further abstract.
Yeah, like the abstract is the word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With that, you've got this concrete thing where you can go, what are the themes in this concrete song that exists?
Yep.
Here,
it's like
we're in hyperreality territory.
Yeah.
Where because we're making the map and then filling in the blanks. So this stuff and it's also got heaps more layers to it, because with that there's the thing and there's the story that we want to tell.
Yeah, because effectively off this social media strategy, you could have a line point to specifically one of the songs, Not So Nostalgic in this case.
Absolutely.
And then you have a mind map that came out from that, which was the previous mind map that was on this whiteboard, Blackboard.
You end up with wheels within wheels within wheels, for sure.
Hooray! Fractals.
But we're, part of this, just like we're building proficiency with sitting in front of cameras, talking into microphones, not saying and and yeah all the time. Like that's one type of proficiency we're building. Being able to get this stuff out of our heads and into a format that makes sense and is plannable and extensible that's part of it too. This is all proficiency building, and it's going to be, the first couple times are going to be garbage. I'm very happy to point at this and be like, I don't know if it's good.
Yeah, but I also feel quite positive about it now that it's started to kind of coalesce in my mind a bit. You know? And but I think one of the things that, like, I'm not always trying to frame what we're doing in a broader context of people that we know who might have had to deal with this in the past. And I can see why there's a massive barrier to entry around these specific ideas.
Yeah. But at the same time, yes, there is. There is
a creative barrier, like a mental barrier. Yeah.
But there is I want to also display that there's a big delta between, like, the feeling of I don't have anything interesting to say. All I did today was roll out of bed and eat a toasted cheese sandwich and scribble in my notepad, and that was it. So what the hell am I going to talk about? But there's a massive delta between that position and
this.
I've given some thought I've given minimal thought.
Well, I guess let's use that idea. I've just rolled out of bed. I only ate a toasted cheese sandwich and I wrote in my notebook. I think that fits into food porn, but in a weird satirical way. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it's like a follow me on my day kind of thing, or this is what I had for breakfast,
Yeah, and plenty of people do that. Like, what's the daily routine for an indie musician who has, who's trying to make it? You
wake up late, eat shit food, rot in bed all day, regretting your life decisions.
Got depressed. But the
depression's not funny. It's a serious thing.
You're the one who laughed.
I know. I was there.
But the point is that depression is funny. The point is, though, that, like, that you can take, like, a gimmicky angle, but just doing that without then looking at, like, well, what goals is this fulfilling, and what meta narrative am I telling?
I feel like there's a framework around this that we could develop.
I mean, there probably is, and in fact, I think I've actually got one a half baked one from last year.
I think we should flesh that bad boy out, because I would certainly like to be able to tick some bad boy boxes with this planning.
Yes, there's nothing that makes you more of a bad boy than paperwork.
I like a guide. Like I was talking about in the first half of the podcast, it helps to have some intention around the decisions that I'm making. If I can't see the intention, then it's fucking stupid.
Chicks dig paper cuts. That's what I'm saying.
Depends. Anyway. Cool. I like this. I think we should do this again.
Yeah.
On this.
We'll
expand.
Yeah. Well, a version 2.
Well, we're going to have to.
It's not just completely off. Well, I mean, we'll get better at being off the cuff.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
This has been partially a success, partially like a little grinding of gears, and that's cool. You know?
My heart hurts.
Your heart hurts.
Yeah, because it's emotional.
Why? What's emotional about this?
It's confronting. It confronts me. It confronts me with all the things that get in the way of me actually finishing shit as an artist. I think, like letting politics get into my head when I'm trying to think about building out an objective path forward.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and fear of failure that gets in the way too. You know,
That's
meta fearing this shit.
fear of the fear.
Yeah, I'm fearing the fear.
Mm.
I don't know. There was a lot of weird, but once we started doing a bit more of this cross-dissimile stuff, the food porn stuff, that was really, that kind of unlocked some ideas. And particularly when we only had the Olympics up there, once we got this alternate slow-mo Chariots of the Fire thing, there was like a whole group of things that connected together there. So I understand that it's a process, but it did feel weird and hurt my soul.
But also, I can't stress this strongly enough. We're going to throw 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% of it away.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
I know.
All the stuff that you look at and go, it's not good enough.
Yeah.
Like, it really is only going to be the ideas that you look at and go, that's great. Like, that would be really fun. Stuff like the alternate slow-mo replay song, that's like a Friday night session.
Yeah.
You know,
so good.
So fun.
Yeah.
And just whatever comes out of it, doesn't need further development.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
It's good to go.
Yeah.
The stuff like slam poetry. There's a slam poetry night that happens at Wollongong.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
They happen everywhere.
Yeah, but like a regular thing.
Yeah.
Finding people who could be interesting to bounce
collaborate
with.
Yeah, like actual performers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Very easy to do.
Mm.
And we can't, again, like Friday night, we do like an improvised thing with them over the top of it.
Yeah, awesome. Done.
Great.
Done deal.
Done.
That fits into our culture jam idea, which I think kind of
yeah.
works quite well. Yeah.
Setting writing to music, you know, that's fine. You take one stanza out of a poem you like,
and off you go.
30 seconds or less of music that you need to make for that.
Mm.
You know, you sit down at a keyboard with a guitar, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something that it's not a cover of a thing. It engages an audience who is not already saturated with music content as well.
Yeah.
You're taking you're
expanding the surface area. Is that what you're saying?
expanding the surface area, exactly.
Which is important.
That's my thing. Anyway.
Yeah.
It's now midday.
Yep. For us.
Shall we call it there?
I think we should, because I need to digest, and I think everyone else does.
Lovely. Well, thank you to anyone who has joined us on this little journey today. We've loved having you along, and we look forward to doing it again soon. We are a band called Frats, or part of a band called Frats. There is others involved. They are not here. So if you do want to eventually meet them, follow along.
Eventually.
And we'll keep doing this. We'll keep trying to figure out what the hell we're doing. We'll keep trying to figure out how to communicate what the hell we're doing and make things together.
Yeah.
So follow and subscribe and heart and share and whatever else to make us fail faster and fail better. Enjoy the rest of your days. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.